Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we're tapping into the streets of Chicago, and we're going to be talking about when Latin kings killed other Latin kings. And the cases that we're going to be addressing is going to be from 2015 until 2016. Now, the Latin Kings is one of the larger gangs in Chicago that has many different sets throughout the city. But one set in particular was known for beefing with other kings, especially the kings from up north. Now, that set was from Lawrence and Kedzie, known as the Homicide Latin Kings. Now, the Homicide Latin Kings, they beef with kings from West Ridge, like RC, GW, PA, even the Cass Kings from Roger Park. Now, in May of 2015, Homicide King Edgar Martinez, along with Daniel Rivera, aka Buck, from Cass Kings, were riding along in a car with Rivera's cousin as they drove nearby an alley on North Troy Avenue. They would pull the car into this nearby alley where a group of men stood outside. Martinez and Rivera both exited the vehicle with their guns drawn and opened fire. Now, Rivera was standing in front of Martinez. So in the midst of the shooting, Rivera was accidentally hit in the back by friendly fire from Martinez's gun. Rivera was critically wounded as he collapsed onto the ground. Martinez would immediately run up to Rivera's body and grab his gun out his hand and then run back to the car where Rivera's cousin, and they both drove off. Now, police would arrive shortly after and find Daniel Rivera dead in the alley. About 15 minutes later, Martinez and Rivera's cousin will be pulled over by police for a traffic violation. Now, at this time, they were not suspects, so they would get their ticket, and the Chicago PD would let them go. As police continued their investigation, they would retrieve surveillance footage nearby, which would catch parts of the shooting on camera. But witnesses in the area would come forward, and they would identify Edgar Martinez as the gunman. Now, 2 weeks later, Martinez would be arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Now, although this was a friendly fire shooting and not done on purpose, certain Latin King members felt otherwise. Nearly a year would go by, and on March 20th, 2016, a Homicide Latin King by the name of Christian Ortiz, aka CK, will be walking on the 4800 block of Albany Avenue at around 2 p.m. when out of nowhere, allegedly a Latin King from Cass will come rolling up on his bike and open fire. CK will be critically wounded with a shot to his abdomen. EMTs would arrive immediately and transport him to the Masonic Medical Center, where shortly after, he will be pronounced dead. Now, no one knows for certain who the exact shooter was, but it's believed to be a retaliation hit for the death of Daniel Rivera, which took place back in May of 2015. Now, the RC Kings, aka Rosemont and Claremont, had a bitter rivalry with the Homicide Kings. But things really got heated up in April 2016 when an RC King named Del Ames Sullivan, aka King Demon, would upload a video to YouTube of him beating up a Homicide King from Kedzie. Now, King Demon would state in the comments that last summer, this particular Homicide King was running his mouth about the Rosemont Kings. Now, after this squabble would take place, things would escalate. Only 2 months later, a well-respected RC King named Kazar Shako, aka KC, would have a deadly run-in with the Homicide Kings from Kedzie. On June 1st, King KC was parked in his car on the 3000 block of Devon Avenue in front of a convenience store. At around 9 p.m., a member of the Homicide Kings would exit that same store and see KC sitting in his car and, without saying a word, open fire. Now, KC was hit multiple times in his chest as the gunman fled the scene. Police and the EMTs would arrive on scene, and KC would be transported to St. Francis Hospital. And nearly 20 minutes later, he will be pronounced dead. Now, the death of KC would only increase the beef between the Homicide Kings and the RC Kings, and it would also spark another fatal confrontation amongst the Northside Kings. Now, a year prior, a known Latin King from St. Louis and the RC area named Tan Stokes, aka Trigger, would be arrested after violating his probation. He would be sent to Muddy River Correctional Facility. Now, Tan, throughout his stay at the correctional facility, would be constantly in contact with different Latin Kings, along with his mother, making three-way phone calls. Now, there will be one phone call where Tan will get into an argument with the RC Latin King, and during this argument, Tan would decide to make a disrespectful remark about the death of King KC, which took place back in June. And as we know, disrespecting a rival's dead loved one is deadly in Chicago, but to disrespect a fellow Latin King member from the same set is much worse than dissing a rival. And this disrespectful remark by Trayshawn would cost him dearly. Now, King Demon from the RC set was not going to tolerate any disrespect, especially by this homeboy King KC. Now, up until this point, King Demon had been arrested multiple times: robbery, battery, and felony in possession of a firearm and resisting arrest. And every single one of these charges all occurred within the 10 to 11 month time period. But on October 14, 2016, Latin King Tan Stokes, aka Trigger, was released from prison. Now, Stokes spent most of his day at home with his family, but later on that day, he had plans to meet up with some friends to celebrate. But before he left his house, he would tell his mother that he was tired of being a piece of shit, that he just wanted to be there to take care of his kids. Now, later that night, he would connect with fellow Latin King members as they all will go out together to eat. Now, King Demon will make a phone call to one of the Latin Kings that was there with Stokes and ask if it was cool if he came through. Stokes was cool with it and told him to come join him. Now, at around 8:55 p.m., King Demon would join Stokes and the other Latin Kings. As the group headed towards the liquor store, out of nowhere, King Demon pulled out his gun, aimed it at Stokes, and opened fire. Tan Stokes was hit multiple times in the chest as he collapsed to the ground, and King Demon immediately fled the scene. Now, EMTs would arrive shortly after, and Tan Stokes will be rushed to St. Francis Hospital. And not long after arriving, Tan Stokes, aka Trigger, was pronounced dead. Now, once the police began their investigation, Tan Stokes' mother, Kelly Collier, would relay her suspicion to the detectives working the case. His mother stated that she knew that someone from the Latin Kings did it, simply based on the three-way phone call that took place earlier in the year when Trayshawn was in jail, where he got into an argument with another Latin King and this deceased Latin King member, King KC. Also, the same day that Trayshawn was murdered, King Demon would take to Facebook, posting a cryptic message saying, "I did this for KC." Now, Trayshawn's mother, who would see this post, believed in that moment that King Demon was the shooter. Now, when the time came to plan for Tan Stokes' funeral, his mother initially decided not to hold a funeral because she was worried that her son's killer would be in attendance at the funeral. But detectives would later convince her to have the funeral in hopes that more information will come out, possibly through conversations from other Latin King members. During the funeral, Trayshawn's mother noticed that King Demon laughed the entire service, and all this did was further fuel her suspicion that King Demon was the man that killed her son. Now, as time went by, the detectives would let Trayshawn's mother know that Del Lames, aka King Demon, was the murder suspect based on their investigation findings. Eventually, King Demon would be arrested for drinking in public and being a felon in possession with a firearm, and this will automatically send him back to jail. Now, while in custody, 4 months would pass, and on February 17, 2017, King Demon will be officially charged with the murder of fellow Latin King member Tan Stokes. Now, Tan Stokes' mother would make a statement that she has known Sullivan for years. She also believes that he was not acting alone, that she truly believes that other Latin King members were involved with setting up her son that night of his death. Now, Delaine Sullivan, aka King Demon, would be found guilty of murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. I'd like to thank everybody for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next time.